given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, we all know that lack of correctional leadership is killing employee morale. So today's episode is about that first level of leadership, and it's about position. My wife for Father's Day, by the way, guys, happy Father's Day to everyone who's a father out there. Russ Hamilton will be the guest for today's show. Happy Father's Day to Russ Hamilton. We'll see him shortly. My wife bought me this book, How to Lead, How Successful People Lead. It's a book by John Maxwell. This is the compact version. I've actually read the longer version as well. But there's a lot of good tidbits here. And I thought what I could do today is kind of apply some of these theories to the world of corrections. I'm going to take note of that first level that's defined by the title of your position. And I want to have this discussion with Russ, who we're going to kind of talk about the upside of having that title, the downside if you just remain as a positional supervisor, which means that this first level is the first level. It's the foundation. You're meant to move up. But there's a lot of people that get stuck in that positional title. That's it. They use the position and believe that they're leaders. It's not the case. This is your entry level. This is the beginning. And I want to kind of emphasize the importance of where you got to be and how you need to grow. And this book has some very good points that I would like to share. And I don't think it's really ever been applied to corrections. Usually these types of books you find in the business world. So this is an attempt to bring this into the correctional setting. And I would love to get your guys' thoughts on, if this was worth maybe doing the next episode, which would be number 2, which will talk about a leader's permission to lead. So again, today is going to be a great topic. And my guest today is Russ Hamilton. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Anthony. How's it going?
Hey, Russ, how's Keepers of Chaos going?
Keepers of Chaos doing great. Just had probably another 15 to 20 members in the past 24 hours. So that's looking good. Trying to, make sure that we keep all of those brethren, all of our sisters, well-fed, well-educated, trained, and, give them all of the content and history and so forth that we can.
Now, by the way, guys, Russ has no idea what I'm sending his way. I kind of highlighted some notes. I'm going to toss it back at Russ because I feel that together, me and Russ can totally apply this to the correction setting. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. Would you agree, Russ? Once you're done drinking that lemonade there?
Yeah, I'm parched. Let me tell you something. California today is 108 degrees where I'm at. So I got to do, all of the hydration that I can right now.
All right, so now, guys, be advised, I have 2 sponsors for the show. The first sponsor is going to be Guardian RFID. Now, guys, today's video is brought to you by Guardian RFID. From inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit Guardian RFID for more information. My second sponsor is American Military University. You're going to see the commercial when we go to our break. Guys, if you want to get a higher degree, come on, guys. Go into the American Military University, seek that higher education, and then bring that education, partner with experience, into the classrooms. We need more people with experience out in those classrooms teaching those young minds. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections, so please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell is going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to American University sponsor, the American Military University. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about the first level of leadership position. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, and we are back. Hey, Russ, real quick, so people kind of get a base of what it is that we're discussing. Is there a difference between a supervisor and a leader?
Yeah, supervisor is something that's, conferred upon you. It's something that you've demonstrated some type of acumen for, whether that's test taking or being able to interview well. Maybe it's your experience. Maybe it's some other things. Maybe there's some intangibles. Maybe there's an element of, the political about it. And that's the little thing that they give you, that you wear on your collar, whether that's a sergeant or a major or captain or whatever, right? And that has almost zero to do with leadership because that's conferred upon you. Real leadership takes place from anybody. I mean, from the lowest correctional officer up there all the way through the ranks, if they want it and if they have the ability to do it, and if people look at them and see a leader.
Now, Russ, you touched on a couple of things right now. So I want to talk about the upside. The upside first of being brought into a position that gives you a chance to be a leader. So the first thing that's mentioned in this phenomenal book by John Maxwell is, let me just get there, is you've been invited to the leadership table. And right off the bat, it says a leadership position is usually given to people because they have leadership potential. Russ mentioned something real quick. For some of our positions, it requires a test. Let's say you're moving up in rank, sergeant, lieutenant, major, captain, whatever it is, that's a test. If you do well on the test, that shows that maybe there's some potential for you to be a leader. Doesn't make you a leader yet. That just means you're a good test taker. But it shows that you have potential to be a leader. Also, there are some positions in which you are appointed where someone has faith in you and says, you know what? I would like to put you in this position. You may find that on the administrative level, the higher executive staff, so far and so on. Usually when you're appointed, it's a position of trust. But again, there is a potential that they see in you. I would like to say if you are at that higher position and you are able to give someone that appointed position, to appoint someone into one of those higher level positions, John Maxwell says it best right here. The best leaders promote people into leadership based on leadership potential, not on politics, seniority, credentials, or convenience. To me, that is extremely powerful. Hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, you know what? I guess when you look at it, obviously, that's what we hope that our particular department, our particular institution would adhere to, right? That there's, a merit-based system, that it's fair, and that, the right people have the opportunity, and that the right people are the ones giving those people that opportunity. As we all know, it ain't a perfect world out there. So sometimes, maybe even a lot of times, that's not exactly what we get. And yet we have to try and work through that and try and make the best of it. And sometimes that's why we rely on these positions and these people that don't have necessarily that position, but they are a leader.
Yeah, and guys, this is the first good news because right here, think about the implication when you're put into this type of position. Right here, it usually means that the person in authority believes the new leader has some degree of potential for leading. That's good news. So if you're new to leadership and you have been invited to lead something, then celebrate the fact that someone in authority believes in you. So again, if you're good on a test and you do well, that's a great initial step forward. But again, that's not the only step that's needed to become a leader. That just kind of gets you in a position to lead. Or if someone higher up says, hey, you're that person, I believe in you, that's great. That shows that they have some level of faith in the job that you need to carry out. But again, like Russ said, for those people in that position to have that power to appoint, it's not about promoting friends or, looking for that right person so you yourself can make that connection you need to move up. This is who's going to be best to be a leader, to serve the people that they supervise. The next thing that they touch on, which I thought was great, by the way, is a leadership position means authority is recognized. Now, when an individual receives a position and title, some level of authority or power usually comes with them. Often in the beginning, the power is very limited, but that's okay because most leaders need to prove themselves with little before being given much. As a new leader, you must use the authority you are given wisely to advance the team and help the people you lead. Do that, and your people will begin to give you even greater authority. When that happens, you gain leadership, not just a position. You gain leadership and not just a position. So right now, the moment you enter that position, the moment you're trying to cultivate yourself into becoming a leader, yes, you are going to be recognized with some level of authority, but in order to fully be able to attain that respect in that position, that real true respect that comes with that highest level of authority, you have to first show that you're willing to work for the people that you supervise. Look what I just said. You have to work for the people you supervise. Russ, as a sergeant, I know you could definitely relate to this, correct?
Yeah, and it's that thing, there is a recognition of that position. It's a recognition of the office, if you will, right? And so we recognize that this person that has a particular, shape and color of brass on their collar holds that position, right? It's a different thing to recognize their ability altogether, though.
Right. Now, that, by the way, guys, the key to here right now is that you're entering yourself into this position so you yourself can cultivate. You can't depend on the position to say that you are now a leader. It's not about that. It's about what you can bring to the position that makes you a leader. The next thing that he mentions, which I think is great, is a leadership position is an invitation to grow as a leader. And that's just about what we are kind of just touched into. When you enter a leadership position, this is your moment to focus on what you need to do to be better for the people that you supervise. This is not meant for you to be selfish when you take this position. And he says it best here. Leadership will only be successful if you dedicate yourself to continual development. If you believe that the position makes the leader, you will have a hard time becoming a good leader. You'll be tempted to stop and gaze, meaning you'll stay where you are and enjoy the position's benefits instead of striving to grow and become the best leader you can. If you want to make an impact, start with yourself. Russ, what does that mean?
I think that, I can break that down real simply, right? Is the only real metric that you have of your success is the success of those other people that you're supervising, those other people, that you're bringing along, that you're training, and that you're giving directives to, and that. All right. So that's the only measure of your success, is how successful they are. So, really, there's a lot of guys out there that get so hung up on what's on their collar and stuff, and they create their own little fiefdoms, and they're never about the job. They're only about what, the dictates of their job, what their job looks like on paper, the position itself.
Right. And guys, John Maxwell says it best here, too. I think this does apply to corrections. The leaders who do the greatest harm to an organization are the ones who think they have arrived. Once they receive the title or position they desire, they stop growing. They stop innovating. They stop improving. They rest on their entitlements and clog up everything. Key is to make the most of this opportunity in leadership by making growth your goal and strive to keep growing. Good leaders are always good learners. And I think that's what me and Russ are trying to get at. So all because you've been given that position, you're not there yet. You have to continue to grow and, again, continue to serve the people. And the last upside of this position, guys, because believe it or not, that is an upside, to be given this leadership position and to continue to grow, to continue to become better. That's a beautiful thing. To me, that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I got almost 20 years in. I'm still learning, and Russ is retired, and he's still learning. The last part he mentions is a leadership position allows potential leaders to shape and define their leadership. And what I think he means by that, guys, is that when you cross into that leadership position, you have a chance to create an impact. Now, an impact is different than impressing people. An impact is when you're immediately close to somebody, you're close to your team. That's when you're able to create that impact. But if you're the type of supervisor that thinks your team's all the way down here and you're all the way ahead, guys, that's you're trying to impress. When you're looking to make an impact, you have to be next to your people and you have to cultivate them to kind of move with you. If you're on top of that hill and you're by yourself, then you're doing it wrong. And how you do it as a leader is, one, you're going to answer a few questions. Who am I? So who do I want to be? Who am I? Who am I? Who do I want to be as a leader? What can I provide? You also want to know what your values are. Because once you know what your values are, and hopefully they're ethical and great professional values, then you're able to pass those values on to the people that you lead. And they'll follow that, guys. You know, we tend to follow people that we trust, but also we share similar values. And when we value each other, next thing you know, we have a team that's just so tight. And the last part of that all is, what leadership practices do I want to put in place? So, Russ, if I could kind of get you to touch on all three of those, what does it mean first when someone asks themselves, who am I as a leader as related to the correctional setting?
I think that means, you have to pick out, what your sphere of influence is going to be and how it's going to impact those people that you're supposed to be leading, right? I felt for me, I was always so focused on safety and security. I hope that my sphere of influence is going to make them into more safe, more secure, better, more well-trained officers. And my hope, my sincere hope, is that they're going to pass that on to other people. And that ripple effect is going to be felt for years to come after I'm gone. Now, there may be no way of knowing that, but that's the metric that I set for myself. But everyone has that sphere of influence. And that's where you have to decide, exactly what kind of impact you're going to have and how it's going to ripple out through the ages and through the personnel and the manpower.
Now, Russ, I agree with that 100%. I think that the only way you can become a good leader is if you know yourself. Because when you know yourself, you're consistent with who you are. And therefore, if you're consistent with who you are, then you're able to be consistent in your dealings with other people. And believe it or not, guys, consistency brings trust. Consistency brings confidence. Not just confidence in yourself, but confidence and trust in how people see you. Now, Russ, another part he mentions are, what are my values? I mean, as a leader, how good is it for you to know what values you want to have in that leadership position, especially at that get-go, the very beginning, the foundation?
Yeah, so when you're setting your values, well, actually, you should already have them set. You should have some idea of what they are. And, we can talk about, the base ones that are things like, honesty, integrity, productivity, and those abilities to be able to, teach people the things that they need to know. Ultimately, those are the things that you have to pass on to your subordinates or you're a failure. So that's the reason why those are so important, because if you can't pass them on, they do no good to you in and of yourself, because you're not growing, you're not cultivating, and you're not going to, pass on that sphere of influence that I talked about earlier.
Right. And guys, this happens right from the get-go. As soon as you enter this career, as soon as you step in the first day, have some of those values in play. Because if you don't, and you become inconsistent as you start to move up, people aren't going to see you with any level of value. They're going to see you as a hypocrite. When you come in, you got to have a purpose, something defined, this internal why. That's where your values are. And as you start to move up, especially if you see this as a career, right from day one, you should be professional. Then when you take those values up, people know what you're about because they've seen you that way when you were an officer or when you were at the lowest level. So you're bringing the values to that highest level. You're taking them with you. Guys, it's not the position that brings the value. It's you bringing the value to the position. So right from day one, if you've seen this as a career, have those values in place. So when you move up, you take those values with you. Russ, the other part that he mentioned was, what leadership practices do I want to put in place? So Russ, you you as a sergeant, I'm sure, especially in San Quentin, as you developed, I'm sure, trial and error, obviously, you picked up on some good practices. What are some of the things that you would have done to kind of implement some good practices for leadership?
So when I finally pulled the trigger and went ahead and promoted, the thing for me is I had to select those things that I felt that I had, the most talent in, right? And so I think one of my talents I always felt was, being able to read people and being able to understand where they were coming from. So what I always wanted to do, I always wanted my people to feel like I had their back. And so I started with that level right there. And the first thing that I wanted to do is, I wanted to try and clone myself and teach them how to do things, how to do a search, how to do a dorm raid, how to identify gang members, how to do paperwork and things like this. But then on the other side of it, I wanted to take and do some of those things that had just, irritated me to death and do away with them. And one of those things was like, chain of command. I had some of my own supervisors that they were, of the mindset, they wanted to, have that open door policy with the inmates. And so I cut that right out. I said, no, inmates have to have permission to talk to me, and they have to get permission from my officers, right? And that builds rapport between me and the officer, and they know at the same time that just because that inmate doesn't have instant access, that he had better be the one coming up with the right solution. Otherwise I'm going to come back on him later. But it shuts down a lot of the nonsense. So you start to inculcate these things that you've thought of in the years prior to your run up on this, and then make them into the vision that you want to see, the vision that you want to see, the vision that you want to bring to fruition. And if you can get your personnel to buy into that vision, then that's where real success starts to come in.
I love the fact that you're saying vision. I remember having a discussion recently, and I was looking to move up, and someone had said, well, you got to memorize policy. I said, anybody can memorize policy. I want to give a vision. And I think, to me, that's what separates the bunch. But sometimes, unfortunately, not everybody sees the vision yet. They may later on, but for me, it's not about memorizing policy. It's exactly what Russ said. It's about having a vision. One of the things I want to talk about is the value part does intercede with the practice, because if you want to become a successful leader, you must not only know yourself and define your values, you must also live them out. Quote right from John Maxwell. He says, as you think about the way you'll define your leadership, take into consideration what kind of habits and systems you will consistently practice. And for me, as I mentioned, that practice started the moment I entered this profession. As I was starting to find my way, I knew who I wanted to be, though. Yes, I discovered certain ways to deal with certain things, but I never shifted from who I wanted to be when I came into this profession. I think it's great advice to know who you are when you enter this profession, but I never shifted. I never shifted, and I was always professional. And as I moved up, those consistent habits, those practices that I took with me as an officer are now with me at the highest level I've achieved so far. And it's a great thing to have, because, again, that consistency. I love when people come up and say, Gangi, you've never changed. And I never realized how powerful that is until I got to the highest position. And then the funny thing is, the reason why I know I haven't changed is because every time I go to look to solve an issue, obviously depending on what the issue is, most of the time I find myself remembering my time as an officer and what would I do as an officer. So for those that decide to move up and forget everything they've ever done, you're destroying who you became and probably the reason why you got there. So, I mean, Russ, I got to ask that again, Russ. How many times have you been told, hey, you've never changed? And now looking back at this and what we're talking about now, how important is that?
Yeah, that's just that number one, consistency. I think that, when you first start in this profession, you're kind of, eking out what your values are, what your personality is, and the method that you're going to operate. But then shortly after that, you should be in that groove where you're not going to change anything very much for a long, long time, hopefully. And, all the time, I hear people talk about, well, that guy changed because, he put that brass on and he became an asshole. And really, all it really did was just reveal what was already there because, he feels like he can rely on that, for his authority. All of these horror stories that you hear about people, that supposedly changed. And did they change? No, it was just revealed. You either step up to the plate or you just kind of let your whole career happen to you. And so, the choice is yours. You get to make it what you want, but, you do it from a baseline of where you started from.
Yeah, and guys, that is so important. If you guys decide to move up, that baseline is your foundation. Now, guys, we're going to talk about the downside of the position. There's about 8 things we're going to discover here and discuss. And I'm very curious to get Russ's opinion on this. But right off the bat, the quote right off the top is true leadership isn't about position. I think we made that kind of clear, but we are going to touch on that because that's a big part of the foundation of this discussion. So we're going to have to revisit it again. But first thing he says is having a leadership position is often misleading. And I want to read a little bit of this part here. The easiest way to define leadership is by position. Once you have a position or title, people will identify you with it. However, positions and titles are very misleading. A position always promises more than it can deliver. Having a leadership position does not make you a leader. Rather, it's an opportunity to become a leader. Do you think a lot of people don't understand the difference? They automatically think that we're in their position, automatically a leader, or do they think it's an opportunity to become one, Russ? I know for me, when I got the higher position, that was my opportunity to be that leader. It didn't mean I was a leader. It just gave me the opportunity to become one. And I agree with that. What's your thought? Do you think a lot of people confuse that?
Well, in this business, there's a lot of, strictures that bind us, right? Because, in a way, we're all kind of these sort of paramilitary type of organizations. And so we have this organized chain of command. And that gets to be seen by people, whether it's on the outside or whether it's on the inside, as, an unfailing, amount of power at each level, right? And so sometimes we fail to see those outlier people, that they might be several positions down, but they're the ones that really have all the power. And sometimes we assume that those who have gained the power, that they've gained it, through meritocracy, rather than, kissing butt or, politically connected to someone. So that's the reason that things exist like that. And we just have to do our best to be the ones that have that true motivation to get the true leadership and to use it and to wield it wisely.
Yeah, and John Maxwell says it best here. He said when he was young, he defined leading as a noun, who I was, and not a verb, what I was doing. Leadership is action, not position. Leadership is the process, not the position. That's powerful, guys. The next thing he mentions is leaders who rely on position to lead often devalue people. Now, that to me is extremely powerful. He says people who rely on position for their leadership almost always place a very high value on holding on to their position, often above everything else they do. They often see subordinates as an annoyance, as interchangeable cogs in the organizational machine, or even as troublesome obstacles to their goal of getting a promotion to their next position. As a result, department teams or organizations that have positional leaders suffer terrible morale. Hey, Russ, you know what's funny, Russ? One of the things he mentioned here about leaders who rely on position to lead often devalue people. Think about this, guys. So when you become a leader, it is about working on a team. It's about building the team and really cultivating other people to be leaders to eventually replace you. I mean, that's the key. Good leaders, we mentor, we bring people up and we want them to surpass us. But if you're just worried about the position, then you start pulling yourself away from mentoring and trying to get people to be the best that they can be. You know why? Because you may get concerned that they can take your position. That eventually one day they can surpass you. But when you're a leader, that's what you want to happen. When you're a leader, you want to cultivate, you want to transform. But when you're just so focused on that position, then what happens here is you may pull yourself back, because in the end, you're concerned that the more you empower someone, the more you try to cultivate them, then you yourself, your position, could be at risk. Russ, what's your thoughts about that type of leadership, the people that truly rely on the position?
Well, that's unfortunately, an archetype, if you will, that we see in a lot of these positions. I had one particular, he wasn't my direct supervisor, but I had been involved in a lot of things in trying to wrangle in some of the violence that we were having happen on our yard. I was only an officer, but I was on my own time going to California Gang Task Force and doing some things like that. And this guy, he was never about doing his job. He was about doing his position, right? And so, he staked out his own little fiefdom and his territoriality and all these things, and he cut other people off from opportunities, and opportunities to gain knowledge, opportunities to get training, opportunities to possibly promote, and because he thought he could keep all of this stuff for himself. And ultimately, what did he do? He just showed himself to be not a leader. He just showed himself to be a person who wanted to do the description of his job rather than job, because our job, right, is to keep the public safe. Our job is to keep inmates safe. Our job is to further our professional horizon by getting all of the training that we possibly can and helping out these other, intra-departmental things, whether it's, you're helping out the investigation squad, maybe you're helping out the CERT team, maybe you're doing something for a specific unit. Your job doesn't end at some, arbitrary border, and, that's all you ever have to do. Your job is to keep people safe, ultimately. And sometimes you have to go beyond what that piece of paper says in your post orders.
Guys, that means going beyond your comfort zone, because the more you go beyond your comfort zone, the more you start to expand your area. And then your comfort zone gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But if you just want to stay in this little cubicle and that's your comfort zone, then you yourself will never grow as a leader, and you will never get the respect of your people. I think Russ was spot on. And to close off this part, he also says, leaders who rely on their title or position to influence others just do not seem to work well with people. Some don't even like people. They neglect many of the human aspects of leading others. They ignore the fact that all people have hopes, dreams, desires, and goals of their own. They don't recognize that as leaders, they must bring together their vision and the aspirations of their people in a way that benefits everyone. In short, they do not lead well because they fail to acknowledge and take into account that leadership of any kind, in any location, for any purpose, is about working with the people. And guys, this to me got when he says they ignore the fact that all people have hopes, dreams, desires, and goals. That to me is very powerful, because good leaders, they're involved with helping people carry that out. That's what keeps people motivated. And that's what keeps, that momentum going. But when you're just doing it for selfish reasons, and in the end, you're only pushing your desires and your wishes and your dreams, and the team becomes secondary, it's all about you, then they're not going to give you much. And if you're going to separate from them, don't get mad when they start separating from you. But how powerful was that part, Russ?
Well, yeah, you know what? It's easy to supervise a robot, right? Because the robot just, it takes input, it does exactly what you want it to do. And there's not all of these, human frailties associated with it. Anyone could do that, right? You could be replaced by a robot yourself if that was the case. That's not what it is, though. We're in the people business, right? So, you know what? We have to be able to look at those people that we want to lead, see them as people, understand that, they've got concerns and foibles and weaknesses and strengths and all those things. And we have to be able to come up with a game plan to inculcate them into what our vision is, right? They're not going to be perfect. They're not going to be automatons, right? They're going to, they need to take the day off next Saturday. Can you help them with that? Maybe, maybe not. Are some people going to be more needy and harder to train and harder to deal with? Yes. Guess why you got hired? You got hired because someone thought that you'd be good at doing that particular phase of the job.
And guys, by the way, the dialogue we're having right now is, as a positional leader, this is the first step, but you're always growing. You're always going to that next level. So the next dialogue we'll have in the future will be the second level. What we're trying to tell you here is that you can't remain at this level. This is the level where the growth starts. So if you continue to remain at this level, this is the downside. One of the other things he mentions, and I love this, is positional leaders feed on politics. There's a lot of maneuvering. Positional leaders focus on control instead of contribution. Positional leaders focus on control instead of contribution. In my mind, what that means is that we have to help others. That's our goal. This is where the servitude comes in. You know, when you move up, you're moving up so you can have an influence and impact others, so you can help others. You can help your subordinates. It's not the other way around. It's what you can contribute. It's what you can give back. But for those that move up and expect that now the people beneath you are your servants and you're advertising that control, you're going to lose all respect from your people. And the key here, guys, is, again, without that respect from your people, there is no chance for you to be a true leader, and there is no chance for you to take yourself to that next level, which ultimately is that ultimate respect. But Russ, what do you think about positional leaders focus on control over contribution?
Yeah, control tends to be the issue with some people that really, they're not comfortable within their own skin. They have to prove it to themselves that they do have some level of control. We've all seen, that control maniac, that they have to prove it. And they do that under the auspice of thinking that that's what the job is all about. And it's not. We have to do what you said on the end of that, which is the contribution, right? What is my contribution towards this relationship that I have with my subordinates, right? Well, it's the same thing that it should always be, right? I should be taking these people. I should be training them, right? I should be observing them. I should be putting them into positions to help start taking that which I've trained them in and passing it on to other people to get that, that unit of fusion, that critical mass that spreads outward. So once again, when I get back to this, so my sphere of influence is larger, right? And that's what a real leader does, that sphere of influence.
And guys, everything kind of crosses into each other, because the next thing goes, positional leaders place rights over responsibility. Inevitably, positional leaders who rely on their rights develop a sense of entitlement. They expect their people to serve them. They don't look for ways to serve their people. Their job description is more important to them than job development. They value territory over teamwork, which is exactly what Russ just said with the sphere. And as a result, they usually emphasize rules and regulations that are to their advantage, and they ignore relationships. This does nothing to promote teamwork or create a positive working environment. And one last thought, guys, that I want to read from here. Just because you have the right to do something as a leader doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. Changing your focus from rights to responsibility is often a sign of maturity in a leader. Many of us were excited in early leadership years by the authority we had and what we could do with it. The power can be exhilarating, if not downright intoxicating. Each of us as a leader must strive to grow up and grow into a leadership role without relying on our rights. If we can mature in that way, we'll start to change our focus from enjoying authority for its own sake to using authority to serve others. Using authority to serve others. That right there is what's killing corrections. A lot of people that have authority are not using it to serve others. They're using it to serve their own selfish means. This statement right here, using authority to help others. If we had more people in leadership positions that could adopt that mentality, the employee morale would skyrocket. You'd have people that would want to come to work. Russ, How does that make you feel? Using authority to serve others.
Well, yeah, you take that authority that you've been given, right? And you take that authority that you've earned in the minds of your subordinates and those around you, and many times even those above you. I've had wardens come out on the yard and ask me, did I think we were ready to open the yard after a violent event? So you've been given all that. You've taken some of it for yourself. It's been conferred upon you by others. And, the idea being that you're using that to further the goals of those around you, not just to try and, climb my way up to the next rank, or to try and get some glory or some things like that. You actually want to do it to serve others, and not just your subordinates and not just those above you, but to serve the public. I mean, we have a function in society that requires us to keep the public safe, to keep these scoundrels, these predators, in a position where we can control them, where we can stop their violent acts, where we can keep them from escaping. And so it's all part and parcel of it. It's a lot bigger, once again, the sphere of influence, than people think or realize.
And guys, we kind of touched on number 5, where it says positional leadership is often lonely. Being a good leader doesn't mean trying to be king of the hill and standing above and apart from others. Good leadership is about walking beside people and helping them climb up the hill with you. King of the hill leaders create a negative work environment because they are insecure and easily threatened. Whenever they see people with potential starting to climb, it worries them. They fear that their place on top is being threatened. As a result, they undermine the people who show talent, trying to guard their position and keep themselves clearly above and ahead of anyone else. What's the usual result? The best people, feeling undermined and put down, leave the department or organization and look for another hill to climb. Only average or unmotivated people stay, and they know their place is at the bottom. That develops a us versus them culture, with the potential leader standing alone on top. Leadership doesn't have to be lonely. People who feel lonely have created a situation that makes them feel that way. If you're at top of the hill alone, you may get lonely. If you have others alongside you, it's hard to be that way. Guys, I want to touch on just something. I know we kind of touched on this before, but just a little something that he added. Guys, 100% with the fact that if you are, jealous or afraid that your position is threatened and you start undermining people who are starting to move up, you're going to start eliminating the good people that can have a great effect on this profession. It's a very selfish thing to do. As a leader, you need to transform and have them surpass you. We kind of went over that before, but this is great because it kind of tells you what happens when you kind of put yourself above the team, when you put your insecurity above the team. Now what happens is the people that are motivated, the people that can move up and really create an impact, they're gone. And all you have left are the people that are unmotivated. Russ, that's a great perspective he just provided, correct?
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that, I always feel that my fiercest competition is myself. And that's what I want to focus on. I don't want to have to be worried about, who's, coming up behind me, or whether or not someone thinks that they're doing a better job. I worry about what I can do to affect myself and not try and affect and tip the scales on everything about me. Because what happens then is you just become what we talked about a few minutes ago. You become that control freak, right? And you put yourself in a position that you can't actually control, and you'll try and you'll try and try, and you'll just come off looking like a jerk. You'll negatively impact the people that you're supposedly trying to help, and you're just going to put yourself in a bad light. Worry about competing with yourself, doing the best that you can do, and that's all the competition that you should need.
Yeah, that's powerful, Russ. And they go, leaders, number 6 is leaders who remain positioned get branded and stranded. Guys, we talked about this before we entered into the downside, but the longer you stay in this position, this first level where you are defined by your position, the longer you're going to wind up being trapped. He says it right here. Whenever people use their position to lead others for a long time, and fail to develop genuine influence, because again, because you care for your people, they become branded as positional leaders, and they rarely get further opportunities for advancement in that organization. If you've been a positional leader, you can change, and this book will help you. Great book, guys, by the way. But he also says, however, you need to recognize that the longer you have relied on your position, the more difficult it will be for you to change others' perceptions about your leadership style. You may even need to change positions in order to restart the process of developing influence with others. That means, guys, if you're walking around and you're expecting your position to carry you through and moving you up, eventually you're going to hit the point where you don't move. It's not about the position. It's about what you could bring to the position that will move you up. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, at some point you got to decide what's what's bigger, your heart or what's on your collar. So that just goes to show, people they get in that position and they just think, I can do this and this and this and this because of what I'm wearing on my collar. Well, what about when you get yourself into a real jam over something and people really need to see how much heart you've got to fix it, to clean it up, to follow through, to make things right? I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen that, where people just relied on their position and they just thought that they were going to be untouchable. And so they don't bother to do the things that inspire true leadership, right? You can't take a day off from this stuff. If you're out there, hitting the yards every day with your people, that makes you a leader, right? If you're sitting back and allowing, the shift to happen to you, you're going to screw the pooch at some point or another.
Yep. And guys, there's two more parts here before we come to an end, but he also mentions, and we kind of touched on this before, but just another perspective, turnover is high for positional leaders. So he says, when people rely on their position for leadership, the result is almost always high turnover. Good leaders leave an organization when they have to follow bad leaders. Good workers leave an organization when the work environment is poor. Interview people who have left interview people who have left, and the odds are high that they did not leave a job. They left the people they had to work with. I mean, think about how powerful that is. So if you're a bad leader, you're going to lose out on all the good people that can help us be effective as a team. Would you agree to that, Russ? A bad leader can definitely have a huge negative impact on what we are trying to do and what we are trying to accomplish as a team.
Well, you see that day in and day out in corrections, right? And, people, they're not necessarily leaving the job, but what they are doing is they're bidding into something else to get away from someone else, right? And, I've had those individuals that supervise me, and, I call them speed bumps, right? Because, they were more about running things in a way that was just, actually detrimental to safety and security, or was detrimental to the morale, or was, just detrimental to good common sense. And so, all I can say is that those people exist out there, and that's what happens. I mean, it's like, it's like the opposite of moth to a flame. It's like moth to the darkness. People just like, man, I haven't seen that guy in forever. Well, he bid on over to third watch, and now he's out in some gun position where he doesn't have to have any contact with this supervisor, that supervisor, or someone else. So we see it all the time.
Right. And guys, one of the things John Maxwell says when he ends this part of the of number 7 is the organization will not function an organization will not function on a level higher than its leader. It just doesn't happen. So if you have a leader stuck at level 1, then the organization will eventually be stuck at level 1. So I think that, to me, is powerful. The leader is the one that sets the roof. So if you're a leader and you're low, then you can't expect the people to go past you. So I think that's great. It's like the leader sets the ceiling. Would you agree with that, Russ? If you have a leader that's a level 1, you can't expect the people that are beneath them to go past that level.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, right? Is that you're always going to fall down to that lowest common denominator. Now, if you've got a leader that's, you know, a high, you know, common denominator, and that's the lowest one, then, you know, you're going to have a successful organization or a successful unit or what have you. But, you know, absent that, I mean, you're going all the way down to whatever that lowest level is, right? And that's why leaders are so important, though, too, is because, you know, they have these people around them, and some of those people are least common denominators, and hopefully he can polish them up and, you know, add a few points onto that and put them in a position where they are higher up. The only way that you can get beyond that particular little rule is sheer dumb luck, and it's only going to last for about a minute.
Right. And guys, the last part, to me, is the best part. Positional leaders receive people's least, not their best. Right off the bat, Maxwell says people who rely on their position and titles are the weakest of all leaders. They give their least. Get that, guys? I mean, this is your time to develop yourself. And if you're not making the effort to do that, you're not going the extra mile. You are literally giving nothing but the bare minimum. They express their position to do the hard work, or they expect their position to do the hard work for them as a leader. As a result, their people also give their least. Some people who work for a positional leader may start out strong, ambitious, innovative, and motivated, but they rarely stay that way. Typically, they become one of the following three types of employees. So I'm going to run each employee down with Russ and kind of get Russ's thoughts on this. So Russ, right off the bat, before we go into those three types of employees, if you yourself were not making the effort to develop yourself, to make you leave that comfort zone, be that person that serves the people, and you're just kind of doing the bare minimum, I mean, how is that going to affect what you expect from the people that are beneath you?
Yeah, well, you know, just what we talked about a second ago. You know, it's that, you know, the falling down or following that path of least resistance and not making a difference. And that's the way it's going to be. That's why leadership is the thing that cures that.
And now, guys, there's three type of employees that come as a result of a positional leader who doesn't make the extra effort, who only goes the least amount. The first one are the clock watchers. They just watch the clock and can't wait to go on break, can't wait to go home, whatever it is. They're not going to give you anything past the time that they don't have to work, right, Russ? I mean, have you dealt with clock watchers? Are you aware of who clock watchers are?
Yeah, and you know, you supervise lots of those people, right? And that's what they're there for. They're there for the shift, right? They're not thinking back in the past what may have led up to some problems that you're having. They're not thinking ahead to the future. They live only in the present, and their dearest hope is that nothing happens. And by nothing happening, they're not going to go out and find anything just in case, God forbid, right? Now, that's not to say we don't all at times watch the clock, that we don't have those days, but these people, it's endemic to them, and that's their most known feature, as it were.
Right, guys. And here, when he talks about clock watchers, he goes, followers who thrive in level 1 leadership environments love clocks, and they want them visible at all times throughout the building. They evaluate every moment at work according to the clock, how long they've been there, how much time they have left, how long until break time, and how long until lunchtime. Clock watchers always know how much time is left before they can go home, and they never want to work a moment beyond quitting time. But think about it this way. When people who work with you can hardly wait to quit working with you, something is not working. Now, those are the clock watchers. The next ones we have are the just enough people. Now, again, this is the result of working under people who just use their position to carry that level of authority as opposed to actually being a leader and serving the people. So the next one is you have just enough employees. Now, to me, this is powerful. When leaders use their leadership position as leverage, the people who work for them often begin to rely on their rights as employees and the limits of their job descriptions to protect them from having to work any more than is absolutely necessary. Guys, when you don't do for your people, you can't expect them to do for you. When you're giving them the bare minimum, they're going to give you the bare minimum. That's when you go to ask them for something, they go right to their job role and their job description. They're not out to help. They're out to just do what they have to do. And again, watch the clock and go home. And it says they do just enough to get by so they can get paid and to keep their job. When people follow a leader because they have to, they will do only what they have to do. People don't give their best to leaders they like least. They give reluctant compliance, not commitment. They may give their hands, but certainly not their heads or hearts. Just enough people have a hard time showing up. Just enough people have a hard time showing up. The only commitment they show is to taking off the maximum days allowed for any reason. Some spend a lot of mental energy finding creative ways of eliminating work. If only they used the commitment for positive ways. Russ, you ever worked with a just enough person?
Yeah, once again, we got too many of those, right? And they're the ones that, man, they know the latest state laws about the hours they work and the days they can take off and whether something falls under FMLA and it's just an endless litany. They have the MOU memorized backward and forward. And I don't begrudge them that. What I do begrudge them is that they never want to move out of that zone. And their sphere of influence is unfortunately large in that respect because they've got other people coming to them and asking how they can get out of things rather than being, the opposite of that, the employee that's always raising his hand. If you need me, I'll go, Sarge. I'll go over there. I'll do the crime scene, I need someone to conduct cuffing operations in this dorm. I've got 10 drunk inmates. I love those officers. I'll do it. They want to be the ones on the point. They want to be the ones on the spot because guess what? They're going to get out of it. It's not that they're going to get recognition. It's that they're going to get experience. They're going to have a chance to be challenged, and they're going to have a chance to rise to that challenge, and they're going to have a chance to increase their sphere of influence by people seeing them take on the hard tasks and then teaching them how to continue on and mold these other people that also want to learn the hard tasks.
Yeah, and think about this, guys, what Russ is saying. When you get someone that's stuck at that level one, like don't forget, we're going to have to go there, but we don't stay there. We grow. Then look what you're doing now. You're stuck at a level one, but you're also, because of morale and because you're giving the bare minimum and they start giving you the bare minimum, they're not growing. We grow through experience. We grow through trial and error. We grow when we leave our comfort zone. So if you yourself were not leaving your comfort zone, then neither are they. And now no one's growing, and the organization, or having said that, we stand still. And the last part of this is the mentally absent. To me, and I think he says it here too, this may be the worst because this actually obviously spreads very rapid. But it says here, just to read a little bit about this and then get Russ's thoughts. Now we're talking about a level one environment, Russ. Let me get myself out there. A level one environment. Level one environment, again, is when that leader is stuck in that positional position. In level one environment, there are always individuals who may be physically present but mentally absent. They do not engage mentally, and they show up merely to collect a paycheck. This attitude is highly damaging to an organization because it seems to spread. When one person checks out mentally and doesn't suffer any consequences for it, others often follow. Mental turnover and sloppiness are contagious. When the people who work for a team, a department, or an organization give little of themselves, the results are mediocre at best, and morale is gone. Success demands more than most people are willing to offer, but not more than they are capable of giving. The thing that often makes the difference is good leadership. So again, the greatest downside about remaining at this positional leadership style is that it's neither creative nor innovative. It's leadership that just gets by. And if a leader says on the downside of level one long enough, he may find himself on the outside. If a leader feels on level one, there's nowhere to go but U-Haul territory, he'll be moving out and looking for another job. Russ.
So I don't think that there's a better modern example of that than what happened with Jeffrey Epstein. Look, those people, they were invested in just being mentally absent, right? they didn't even do their rounds, right? How did they do their rounds? They did paper rounds. They were writing it down that they were doing their rounds, right? How long have they been doing that, right? Guess who else wasn't making their rounds all the time and not making sure that these people were invested in doing their job? That supervisor was, and the walls just came tumbling down. And so that's a prime example. The problem with this is there's other things that this can lead to. I mean, you can get someone, obviously, Jeffrey Epstein, he died by his own hand, whether he was, suicided, through something more nefarious or not, we may never know. But what we do know is that they didn't do what they were supposed to. Look at Dan Amora, the big escape up there. Same thing. People not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And leaders, ostensible leaders, right? Or rather, that position of leadership, not making sure those people were doing it either. And so it just, once again, it sinks back down to that lowest common denominator. And we end up with things like escapes and staff assaults, deaths, that kind of thing.
Now, guys, John Maxwell's book here, again, great book, How Successful People Lead. The foundation is going to be you have to get that position first. And we talked about the upside of getting the position, but we also talked about the downside of just staying in this position. That's the foundation, guys. Eventually, you have to move up and you take each component with you. So it's a continuous growth. So when I get that position, then level 2, and we'll talk about that next time with Russ, is a permission to lead. It's when the people start to look at you and see you as that leader, and they give you the permission to stand in front and take them where you need to go or where we need to go as a team. But again, the foundation is about the position. That's where it starts first, but it doesn't end there. That was the key of the dialogue. This is the beginning of growth and development, both for you and your relationship with other people. So having said that, I thought this was a great open dialogue. Russ, would you like to say anything in closing?
Yeah, whether you're looking to move up and get a position, where you get some juice and some power, or whether you're just content with, being an officer, you can increase your sphere of influence. You can really, truly be a leader, as long as you're willing to, put in the work that it takes to get there, to be the one that steps forward, to be the one that helps people along, to help train up, especially these new people, to give them knowledge, to give them, context of what their job does, and to, teach them some of the history about what corrections is about. So don't think that you can't be a leader unless you promote, because that's simply not the case. The best leaders out there are the ones that are given it by those who choose to follow.
Yes, and we'll kind of touch on that for our next discussion, Permission to Lead. But guys, I wanted to try to bring this book to the correction setting because leadership is killing morale. And it does start with those leaders who, believe because of their position, they're good leaders. And that's not the case. This discussion was about, what you can bring to that position, but then to continue to grow. This isn't a position you stay in. This is a position that you continue to grow and evolve. And this will take you into that next step of building that relationship with people, because that's what the next step is now. The next step is once I get that leadership position and I get a chance to have that influence, now I got to realize, how do I serve the people? How do I build that relationship with others? I think that's where we're kind of lost. I think most of the problems right now is most of our leaders are stuck at number 1. They just like the title and they use that title to advertise their authority, and they're quick to advertise that authority. I'm a sergeant or I'm a lieutenant and you can't question me. What I mean? We're looking for people that work with us, people that, want to help us when they become a leader. Because again, that's the cool part that he said. Having the authority is meant to serve others, not meant to serve just yourself. And I think that's the most powerful statement that was made today. So again, the next avenue we'll talk about is building that relationship with people, which is the next step in conjunction with the position you're in. And we'll keep on growing. But again, the foundation starts from being invited to that table, having that position, and then what you can bring to that position. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.
go.